What's up, y'all? Man, I am kind of pissed off today. Gotta tell you, there is some things that just have to be said, or so I'm told. In fact, right now, there's a lot of things being said, a lot of telling folks, not a lot of listening, a lot of talking at people. In fact, right now, there's a lot of I told you so going on. Y'all feeling superior? Y'all happy? Happy to be punching down on hurting people, marginalized people, suffering people, because that's what it looks like. I tell the Muslim community, always understand that when people tell you who they are, take them seriously. And the good news is, all these punks with the I told you so about Trump's ridiculous plan that he announced in front of Netanyahu, they're your frenemies. They haven't been your friends, they never were your friends, and they're trying to control you. So remember who they are. Take note and look at them. Because, guys, as my viewers know, I'm all about reconciliation, bringing folks together, bridge building, trying to, you know, bridge divides and get people to understand one another. But sometimes things do need to be said. And even though reconciliation, bringing people together is probably what's needed right now, think about what this means. For more than 2 months, these jerks, these angry neoliberals, mostly white, but you'll see in the video I have for you, not all, they've been sitting on this seething energy, despising anyone who didn't vote the way they wanted them to, despising Muslims, despising Palestinians, despising people against the genocide for months, just selfishly waiting for the very first opportunity that they could say, I told you so. Often when people speak, it says more about who they are than who they're speaking to, and these people are showing you who they are. They're filled with contempt, their anger. They're literally hoping for Palestinians to suffer more so they can score some domestic political points. It's ridiculous, but you know what, those folks can keep on shaming voters because there's a saying for that. The saying goes, keep on trying the same thing and expecting different results. We know what that is. And quite honestly, a lot of these folks are insane. But really, are they just mad that people are waking up to the fact that, there's massive hypocrisy from neoliberals, from corporate Democrats, from the establishment Democrat Party? I think they're upset because they're losing their grip on power. Think about that for a second. They want to put marginalized people back in their places. They want us to vote blue no matter who. Or maybe it's more accurate to say vote blue no matter what they will or won't do for you. Guys, they're telling us to support their needs, to keep them in power, regardless if they support our needs. Last I checked, in a democracy, in a representative republic, votes were earned. You're not entitled to them. We don't owe you a damn thing. Sorry, but you know what? Our community demanded better. We should have gotten better, and y'all are still not listening. So, I want to get into a couple clips of some very, very interesting videos. We're going to go spot by spot and break down some of the dialogue you're seeing from some of these entitled people. Also, don't think this is racial because it's not. I mean, there is a high propensity towards white neoliberals in particular having this kind of shaming and entitlement view, but it doesn't come just from them. It comes from all over the place when people start thinking they're part of the establishment. So without further ado, let's get into this video.
If you are articulating to me at this table that there is someone right now who withheld their vote or Donald Trump or voted for Donald Trump because they felt Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were the same when it came to
No one said that.
That is what you're just saying.
No, you're not listening. What I'm saying is that they understood that Trump could be worse, but they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Kamala Harris because they made a calculation that this was in their longer-term interest to not reward the Democratic Party for a policy that was well.
See how everyone's interrupting him as soon as he starts talking about the Democratic Party had a responsibility to the voters?
And so, and so when,
And this is why. And so when Democrats won't listen to Muslims,
and when Palestinians are
Democrats won't
displaced.
listen to Muslims, so you
I can look at this and I can tell you that most people, I know so many, I'm in Michigan, I know so many people who voted for Trump. They voted for him because of the border crisis, because of inflation, because of the economy, not because they want to go on another military adventure, this time invading the Gaza Strip.
But a lot of Arab Americans in Michigan also voted for Trump.
Well, that vote
so
aged poorly. To the lefties who voted against Kamala because of this issue, it aged poorly.
Can I just read this?
Look, I got to stop here because honestly, he's correct. That vote did age terribly poorly. And for the record, I was not at all for voting for Trump. In fact, I went out of my way to make sure everyone knew I was voting against them and against him. And I still took so much incredible amounts of heat because I voted third party. Now, I didn't just vote third party willy-nilly. I took the time to understand where I lived, researched the probability of my state, Colorado, going for Trump, which was almost zero, and then I decided I'm going to vote third party only at the presidential level and vote against Donald Trump's movement down ballot. And in fact, I created a whole movement called Vote Blue, Accept You Know Who to do that and to encourage everyone who would listen to do the same. And then, in fact, even after that, I went out of my way to tell people in swing states, states that were actually mattered for the election, states where the vote actually could make an outcome one way or the other. And I said, guys, there's a thing called vote swapping, and you can hook up with someone in a safe state. That way, you can vote against Trump and still have your vote counted in order to prevent Trump from taking power. That was one of the most important things. And these people don't pay any attention. They act like it's this little simple deal. And the more I explain it to people, the more frustrated I get because like I can explain it to them, but I can't understand it for them. Some folks, they just demand fealty for their candidate. And those days are over. I'm sorry, they're over. Back to the video.
Statement from the co-chair of the Uncommitted Movement. It was put out tonight. I feel sad and angry and scared for our communities. For months, we warned about the dangers of Trump at home and abroad, but our calls largely went unheard. Trump's illegal calls for ethnic cleansing are horrific. But as on so many issues, Democrats had a chance to persuade voters they were better than the alternative, and they blew it.
They sound ridiculous.
That statement is frustrating. That statement is ill-timed. That statement is petty. I really would call it what I want to call it, but my mom's watching the show. For me, it's if you actually voted one way or withheld your vote, you should own it.
Look, as pretentious as this guy is, I actually agree with him right there. If you vote one way, you should own it. And in all honesty, let's get rid of this "I told you so" energy because it is exhausting. And you know what? If you had thought about it and you were sure about it, own it because no one's going to respect you if you flip-flop on it now. Um, you made a mistake. You think that's true, then own that too. But don't try to have it both ways. Like that's why I came out. I said I voted third party, but I did it with research and I tried to create a movement. And I did that specifically because if they were so concerned about Trump 2.0 and MAGA and the dictatorship and Project 2025, why on earth did they not run a better candidate? Why didn't they run a better campaign? Why didn't they give democracy a real chance by having an open primary? I mean, their savior, Barack Obama, called for it. In fact, Barack Obama was reported as saying he didn't think Kamala could win. So, like, why? Why? Why are you blaming us now? Y'all made those decisions. In fact, it goes farther back than even that. Speaking of Barack Obama, he's the famously one that he said famously, never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up. That's your savior. That's him talking. And you're wanting us to be more loyal to you than your guiding light? Come on now, stop it. If Biden was mentally unfit, why aren't you mad at the people who hid that from the American people for basically his whole term? Why didn't you protest more and demand better once it became, adamantly clear on the debate stage? It's ridiculous for y'all to be, angry at us. On top of that, you're angry at people who didn't get in line. First off, to be angry at Muslims makes no damn sense because we didn't have enough numbers. I've said it repeatedly on this channel. I can link to videos over and over and over again that the Muslims could not have possibly caused the election to go to Trump. The only place we had a chance to really do that was in Dearborn, Michigan. And the way the election was looking to play out, Michigan by itself was not enough to cause it to go. The only other place that really had a big chance was possibly Georgia, and that just wasn't in the cards. There were too many Muslim voters who voted for Harris. And in fact, a lot of experts I know say more Muslims voted for Harris than any other candidate. The CARE poll, yeah, comes out and says Jill Stein got the most votes. But the CARE poll has some flaws. Number one, it's more reflective of their supporters than it is of the national Muslim community, because while CARE is the nation's largest Muslim civil rights organization, and I'm not saying this with shade. I got my start in activism at CARE. I was the first executive director, helped found the Houston office of CARE. The point here is that the evidence shows that there's not a conclusive way to look at the Muslim vote. You can't say that Muslims voted en masse for Trump because even the CARE poll doesn't show that. A lot of data does support that more Muslims voted for Harris than anyone else. And then the CARE outlier poll says people voted their conscience by voting third party, and that's an exit poll. Again, it's hard to really make the case one way or the other. It's not hard to make the case that Gaza was a major factor and that people across the spectrum, and especially young people, voted or didn't vote at all because of Gaza. So, blaming the American Muslim community, just totally uncalled for. And then on top of all that, if you were really worried, really, really worried, you know, why didn't you push for policy changes? Why didn't you make sure that, at least Kamala could have let a speaker come on stage? They're about to get into this in the video. Or maybe it's in the full clip, I'm not sure. But, they rejected a Palestinian Democrat speaker who literally was going to support them and endorse Kamala Harris. So it's ridiculous for you to say, oh, it's the Muslims' fault. They should have ran a better campaign. And on top of all of those things, after the election, everybody seemed pretty chill with Joe Biden and all the former presidents and the whole Congress and Senate from the Democrat side. Almost 100% of them doing the normal transfer of power. I'm not saying you should have done a J6. I'm not saying you should have followed Trump's footsteps, but you could have at least let your base know that you had a backbone. You could have at least went with the fact that the popular vote was so narrow that the Republicans and MAGA don't have a mandate. Yeah, they swept you guys and they mopped the floor with you in the Electoral College. So yeah, it was a blowout that way. But it doesn't mean they have a mandate, and none of y'all were messaging that. So we're going to get back into the video because there's more to come that's just so incredibly frustrating. Let's go.
There was not a question about ethnic cleansing if Kamala Harris would have been the president of the United States.
And this is where Bakari Sellers is 100% dead wrong. Everyone was calling it ethnic cleansing well beforehand. Kamala Harris went out of her way to shut down protesters even before she was the nominee. I played clips of on this channel of her campaign denying hijab wearing Muslim sisters from entering as she was the VP and not even the candidate for president because they didn't want them to protest. And then once she was the nominee, she had her little "Yas Queen" moments. I'm speaking right now. And she did it multiple times. It was horrible optics. She almost learned from it and then reverted to it because she made a decision. She decided that I'm not going to budge on foreign policy. And it wasn't because she was following the president. She knew darn well that she had to establish herself. But instead of doing that, the Democrat strategists said, we're not caving to any pressure. Everyone will get in line because Trump is so awful. Well, you're still not listening and you're still coming to the same well with this, the boogeyman is so bad, you better fall in line. People aren't falling in line anymore. The whole reason you lost is because people aren't falling in line.
I totally disagree with you because I spent many weeks talking to Muslim community leaders and activists and a lot of my friends in the Muslim community, a lot of them in swing states, and they all said the same thing. They said if we're being ignored by the Democrats and we're being ignored by the Republicans, then we can't bring ourselves to vote for it.
But they weren't being ignored.
See how he's missing the point? He's talking about ignored. Bakari Sellers is such a shill for the Democrats. It's unbelievable. Let's let this clip play out because he's going to purposely miss the point as much as possible.
Kamala Harris said many things that were right, but she didn't do anything. And for her to preside over a policy that ended up in their families getting killed, and for her to preside over a policy that ended up in their families getting killed and then asked them to vote for them was something that they couldn't do.
But now the question is,
you can't talk down to the Muslim community and tell them that, oh, you didn't do what's in your best interest. They know what's in their best interest.
But now we're talking about ethnic cleansing.
We were talking about ethnic cleansing before, and you see how he was loaded up trying to interrupt, trying to distract. I just give major kudos to this guy, whoever he is, because he didn't stop talking. He didn't let himself be interrupted. This is something that you guys got to do if you're ever on camera and someone starts trying to gaslight you.
We're talking about 2 million people being displaced. So
they knew what the risks were, and they made a decision because their calculation, if you're interested at all, was that they have to punish the Democrats.
Look at his face. He's not interested. He's trying to talk. He's not listening. And that's the same thing with all the I told you so bros.
Democratic Party, so that the next time this happens, because they've been through so many atrocities, that the Democratic Party, the only one that has a chance of respecting
Do you understand that that is divorced from political reality?
I'm saying we can listen to the Muslim community or we can talk at them.
That's the key money quote right there. We can listen to the Muslim community or we can talk at them. I've been trying for a long time to establish our ability to look into nuance, to, embrace critical thinking. And I can already hear the rebuttals, and it's ridiculous. The rebuttals are it's a two-party system. Realpolitik, y'all should have just gotten in line because it's the choice of the lesser of two evils. We're going to address that later in the video. But at the end of the day, I slowed down and repeated that point. You can't ask someone who to vote for the person who presided over a policy and set of policies and made excuses for the very people who let your family die, who let your relatives die, who let your co-religionists just get slaughtered and die. It's ridiculous. It's an unacceptable expectation. And for people, trying to go there, just stop it. Stop it. Put yourself in someone else's shoes before you pop off at the mouth and act selfishly. Because number one, again, Muslims couldn't have cost the election. And number two, Gaza had a major factor. And number three, you should be angry at the party for not doing better. That's that's the reality. And if you keep buying this I told you so stuff, what's going to happen is the Democrats are going to keep losing, and fascists and hard right people are going to keep winning because at least they're trying to let people feel heard, even if it is a con. And we know it's a con. Now, as far as when it goes to nuance, there's three types of people, guys. Three types that are on this I told you so bandwagon. Um, maybe there's a fourth type because we just saw Bakari Sellers. But the point here is the first type that I want to get into a little bit is this idea of the Muslim Democrats. And I mean Democrat loyalists who won't buck their own party. There's a spectrum here. Within Muslim Democrats, you have people who are first and foremost maybe valuing, how to say it right, their religious identity. And they made a political strategic choice to say that the GOP is not the home for me, or they may think that the GOP is not the home for the American Muslim community. And then they decided, again, this is going to break down into further groups, but they ultimately made the decision that, like civil liberties, civil rights, that kind of thing was more important than, like Islamic moral ethics, which a lot of times the far left is in direct conflict with. So those folks are one level. Another type of Muslim Democrat are people who are lawyers and are looking to run for office themselves, and their Muslim identity more than likely and very often is more cultural than religious in nature. And then with that also becomes their value system also tends to be more secular and more liberal in nature. So those folks are running as Muslim Democrats and often are the most hardcore Democrat loyalists. And just to be honest, they're more liberal and they're more secular, but they're still Muslim. They cling to some element of their Muslim identity. And the funny thing about that, it's kind of ironic. They're the ones that will be the first to spit out Islamophobia and calling everyone an Islamophobe anytime they kind of get any resistance or face any kind of bigotry. And what's to me so ironic about that is, they're using the word Islamophobe and, hearkening to the religion, while at the exact same time, they've kind of racialized themselves and they're trying to racialize the Muslim community. And that's kind of why they naturally fit to the left, because there was kind of a shift in what used to be the Democrat and Republican parties used to have more diversity on both sides. And basically, the Democrats have gotten farther and farther left when it comes to moral and justice values, where the Republicans have got farther and farther right when it comes to conservative and stability values. And again, I'm not placing judgment on these things. What I'm saying is just analyzing the ground that we're stepping on. After that, you have white liberals. And this is, I think, there's going to be subcategories of there too. You're going to have white liberals who are sympathetic to the Muslim community and who actually care about Palestine. And they're making an argument, which is very logical and rational and correct, actually, that Donald Trump was going to be worse. So you should have voted for Harris just in order to do the least harm to the Palestinians. Now, the counter to that, which I've explained in many videos before, was that folks couldn't bring themselves to reward the folks that had an ongoing genocide. They were uncertain, or even if they suspected that Trump would be worse, even if they knew it in their heart, they just couldn't bring themselves to vote for the people who had killed either their families, their co-religionists, or people from their, same ethnicity and background. And I think if anyone stopped and really thought about what I just said, like if you were forced to vote for a party that literally had a public policy that was killing your friends, family, or people who were just like you, who looked like you, spoke like you, had your culture, and then the alternative was to vote for someone who most likely is going to be worse, but the first group had blood on their hands. I think that's a hard decision. It's not something that someone could do easily. Again, that's why I did my third party vote and I made the calculation, to do it where in a way that it couldn't help Trump because I saw that. But again, I'm a white presenting Muslim. My mom's Mexican. I don't have direct ties to the region. So I have a different perspective than a lot of folks. After white liberals, though, and this is where my heart really aches because to me, this is the biggest issue, and I've pointed it out in possible in previous videos as well, is betrayed allies. Other people who are marginalized, other people who are disenfranchised, other people who belong to civil rights communities. Yeah, honestly, um, on one hand, I feel really pained that the American Muslim community didn't vote thinking about your interests. But at the same time, I understand why American Muslims would say, we just can't vote for someone who's actively persecuting our brothers and sisters in faith. And also, again, nuance was what I said in the slide before. A lot of Muslims are diverse. And as I've mentioned earlier in this video, it's unclear where the majority of Muslims voted for. Most likely third parties and Harris were the top. And most likely Harris was the top vote getter. And then, there was maybe a 15, 10% of people, maybe even 20 that voted for Trump. Now, again, you're talking about percentages of less than 2% of the American Muslim population and scattered around. And then only, like one state, Michigan, where they had the chance to really make an impact on the election. So blaming us again, that's not the issue. What should be the issue for you is forcing your politicians to be more reflective and more responsive to Americans. That it should be, I let my party, I let the people I supported not be the type of people who want to earn the vote of the voters. That's the problem here, is not who didn't vote for your candidate. So you need to get off your high horse. Now, to keep on moving, I want to get into something else. And this is going to be a humdinger. And I guess this is my hot take. MLK said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And like I said before, Gaza was probably a determining factor in this election because so many people were so sickened by what they saw that either they didn't vote, they abstained, they voted only down ballot and not for the president, or they even voted in protest, third party or for Trump. So, what does that mean? It means you're feeling the effects of not taking seriously the moral and humanitarian crisis of our generation. So shame on you. Shame on you for trying to keep us from taking it seriously, and shame on you for not doing more. Now, we're going to get into what Malcolm X said in just a minute, but it's because I want us to get back into the video.
The American people are the most selfish, self-absorbed, short-sighted, oblivious people on the face of the earth.
I have mixed feelings about this guy. Mostly, I think he's a jerk. And I think he's just kind of a grifter trying to build a name for himself by opposition politics and not solve anything. I wanted to like him because he has a lot of great content on how he does political analysis of the MAGA movement. Um, Apparently, he's a lawyer, and I think he studied the Constitution in law school and lectured on it. So I find a lot of his takes actually spot on. But just a charming guy. Starts off talking crap about the American people. And as I play his content, I want you to notice how he oscillates between they when he's talking about his fellow Americans and then himself. He always uses me and us when it's the high ground for him, and then they when he's talking about people he disagrees with. And, if you're one of these folks that's just keeping to shame voters and talk down to folks, all you're doing is contributing to the problem. You're making things worse for America, and you really need to rethink that. And also, it takes an incredible amount of privilege to say some of the things that this Yahoo is going to say in just a moment.
Now, obviously, not all Americans are that way, but enough of them. Enough of them that it is a real political problem. And it is, in large part, the reason why we're here, why Donald Trump was reelected. The American people just don't care. They just don't care about virtually anything unless it affects them personally, unless it affects them personally, unless it affects them personally.
And that I want you to really pay attention to, because homie said, unless it affects them personally. I'm pretty sure his rage that I'm about to show you and his mocking of people has a lot to do with it affecting him personally.
One of our biggest problems in this country is that it is full of people who vote who are utterly unserious, who behave like spoiled brat children.
Keep mind of his tone and the way he's talking down at folks. Who's behaving like a child?
And there's no group of people in the last election who demonstrate this more perfectly than Muslims and other voters for whom Gaza and the Palestinians were the most important issue.
Now, a lot of us weren't single issue voters. And that's why a lot of us had a lot more strategic thinking and a lot more nuance in what we did. But this guy's trying to wrap us all up in one group and make us appear ignorant. And again, I've already proven to you how our community couldn't have cost us the election, but he's going to assign us all the blame.
There are many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox. And a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to. But the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling.
And these people were really upset because they thought that Joe Biden wasn't doing enough for the Palestinians.
He said, these people. Remember I told you, pay attention to how he talks about Americans and his fellow Americans. These people.
The Biden administration's response to Hind's killing was simply a larger reflection of a much broader, systematic disregard for Palestinian children. Over 17,400 children in Gaza have been killed by Israel since October 7th.
Yeah, these people had nothing to care about, nothing to stand about. Did you hear that number? Oh my God. It's sickening to even think about.
Not just with U.S. weapons, but through starvation, disease, and more recently, trying to brave freezing temperatures.
And all that happened under Biden-Harris, and Harris made it very, very clear and went out of her way to not only say that she was going to increase military spending and increase I think she said something like making the US military the most lethal in the world. Eh, What does that even mean? We already are. And then went just every possible way that she could tell people that she wasn't going to change Biden's policies. And in some ways, even hinted that she would be more aggressive than Biden. And we're supposed to say all of this is happening and we should have voted for that. Get out of town. Get out of here with that.
And still, when it came to helping those children, the most the Biden administration had to offer were disingenuous attempts to increase aid and months of empty ceasefire promises.
My hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
There must be an immediate ceasefire.
Such claims, including the lies, were used to help whip up massive bipartisan support to send billions more in U.S. tax dollars to kill thousands more Palestinian kids, whose deaths warranted none of the same response. The response to Israeli kids being killed, or even lies about them being killed, was billions more in weapons. The response to scores more Palestinian kids being killed by those weapons was, well, more Palestinian kids being killed.
I'll link to that full video. But I just want you guys to very clearly remember how bad things were for Gaza and for Palestine while Biden was there. He did just one pause on delivery of weapons, and I believe they still went out. And even if that specific order didn't go out, he continued to approve aid package after aid package after aid package, all the way up until his last day in office. Billions of dollars every couple of weeks to continue that war. So don't tell us that just because Trump says something stupid and hasn't actually been able to do it, that it's stupid for us to have voted against an active, ongoing genocide or ethnic cleansing. I don't care what you call it. It was horrible. It still is horrible. And likely it is going to get worse. But it wasn't going to get any better either way.
People just don't care. They just don't care about virtually anything unless it affects them personally.
Now, I repeated that because, again, I want you to know that I think it's pretty transparent. His anger towards voters who cared about Palestine, it's because he feels actually threatened for once. He's seeing the nation, change in a threatening way. And all of a sudden, his privilege isn't there. So he's lashing out at people who should have just gotten in line. Because look at the way he talks to us.
And they were angry. And they threw a fit. And they were going to vote for Donald Trump to send a message, just to make a point that they were angry.
I already covered how most Muslims didn't vote for Donald Trump. A few did out of pure anger. And yet I already said that didn't age well. And I advised against it, argued against it. But who the heck am I to tell people how to vote, especially people who may have dead family members, who may have been from the region and saw their homes destroyed? The arrogance of this guy. He has no idea of what it's like to suffer or be in this kind of situation of those people, and he's going to yell at us. It's disgusting.
Or they were going to vote for a third-party candidate that had no chance of winning, like Jill Stein. Or they were going to, not vote at all, just to make a point, just to stick it to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And we tried to warn those people that is insane, but they didn't listen. And yesterday, our convicted felon president held a joint press conference, as I'm sure you are aware, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And in that press conference, Trump said that he is going to kick out all the Palestinians from Gaza, completely remove them from Gaza, and that the United States will own it. We're going to take it over and own Gaza.
Remember I said watch his use of including himself in America versus not? He just said where. So he's American now when it comes to colonization. He's not afraid to, in all the other clips, Americans are this and that and those people and, oh, not all of us. But the pretentiousness of this guy and the way he talks down to folks, you know he's a grifter. He's just trying to build an audience so that he can, cash out on this whole YouTube thing. And this divisive language, it's ugly and it's part of the problem.
And when we do, we're going to bulldoze the place. And then Donald Trump and his rich billionaire buddies are going to develop it.
You see him smiling now? He was angry before when he was talking about people that didn't vote the way he wants. And then now he's using we, and he's happy as he's giving us the bad news. He's literally been sitting on this, waiting for the first opportunity to talk at us and talk down to us.
And they're going to make a shit ton of money. So these geniuses who voted for Donald Trump because they were mad at Joe Biden for not doing enough for the Palestinians in Gaza.
Hear him laughing in that voice? And these geniuses, again, talking down the arrogance of this fool is astounding.
The guy they voted for is now going to drive the Palestinians completely out of their homeland, completely dislocate them, and take over.
Now, here's another thing that has to be noticed. And this guy in a more recent video watched Ezra Klein's take on Trump and how Trump rules through distraction and narrative building. I said that in my very last video. Trump is full of it. His BS is in part a way to try to create the reality he's narrative building that he wants. Ezra Klein said it better than anybody really could. I said it in a video before, but we all have seen many times how Trump will say something crazy just to distract from something else, or just to keep the narrative moving, or just to get his base excited, and then he won't even try to make that happen. So his takeaway is because Trump said something stupid with Netanyahu right there, that all of a sudden it's going to happen, as if the international community has, nothing to it, as if Trump doesn't have tons of money, tied up in Saudi interest, and Saudi has said clearly that they're not going to support anything without a Palestinian state. It's so much more complex than this fool is trying to make you seem, because all he really cares about is, putting voters that he doesn't feel are equal to him, that he doesn't feel are as smart as him, that he thinks that he should just be able to bully and tell what they should do for his own interest, not for ours. He's doing this because his real anger is we fell out of line. It's one of the ugliest things I've seen since I've been watching this election.
The entire area, and we're going to own it. And Trump is going to put a golf course on it and make money for him and his buddies. That's what they voted for. And you could find countless examples of these people just...
These people again. And he's reveling in our pain and shock.
Done and shocked and upset. And here's I just want to show you this one. These comments from this one woman. Before the election, she wrote this when she was really angry and she was going to make a point. She wrote, "As a Middle Eastern and Muslim voter, I will not be voting for Biden-Harris in 2024.
Now, note that she didn't say she was voting for Trump.
I cannot vote for a cabinet that willfully murders innocent civilians and is complicate in a genocide." I'm sure she meant to write complicit.
And he's pointing that out and probably picked this specific, because I've seen this person online before. She's very prolific. Tons and tons of presence and post all the time across multiple channels. So I'm sure he picked this one because there was a mistake in it, so he can try to feel superior again.
Anyway, let me stop right there for a second. I cannot vote for a cabinet that willfully murders innocent civilians. I wasn't aware that anyone on the Biden administration was murdering civilians.
Yeah, obviously, because you're not paying attention, punk. And I'm willing to bet if I go through his channel a little bit, I would see the exact flip of this argument used against Trumpers, because liberals do it all the time. How could you vote for Trump? He's a racist. He's this, he's that, he's Hitler. They say all of that. I've seen the memes, and I actually like and agree with a lot of them. The things that kind of say, not every Trump supporter is a racist, but every Trump supporter decided it's okay to support a racist, that kind of thing. And I actually don't disagree. I don't see a lie detected necessarily in that statement. But if you're going to use that logic against your political enemies, maybe you should use it against yourself before you spew some ugly hatred online and try to take down somebody for being more principled than you. You should be embarrassed morally. You should be embarrassed.
But whatever. She concludes with, "Sorry, folks, can't be me. This decision has been made." So there she was. She was standing on principle, don't you know?
Yeah, and you should have too. You should have standed on principle that, we had a better platform from the Democrats, that we had a better candidate, that she ran a better campaign. There were so many mistakes made. You should be angry at the Democrats, not angry at the people who didn't buy what they're selling. They have to. In fact, Kamala herself said, "I want to earn your vote." And then she didn't. She didn't even try.
She was gonna make a point. I'm not voting for Biden-Harris in 2024 because they weren't giving me everything I wanted when I wanted it.
See, also, this is the whole logical fallacy because he's putting words into her mouth and into, by extension, everyone who didn't vote the way he wants, trying to make us sound really ridiculous. The biggest straw man ever. She didn't give me everything I want when I wanted it. You know, Shut the hell up with that, man. You're assuming way too much. And you're taking a very complicated situation and trying to make it simple so you can build your own brand off of it. It's ugly and disgusting.
So I'm gonna throw a fit.
Who's throwing the fit right now?
Now she writes, "Why the fuck are Democrats so silent? The nation is falling apart. Please, for the love of God, say or do something." My God. How do you address such unbelievable stupidity?
Probably the same way that I'm trying to address some such unbelievable arrogance.
Look, Ariana.
You see the tone?
Why
the way he said her name?
are Democrats so silent? Why aren't they doing something? Because they can't.
And that's a lie. I just talked to you about why didn't they not normalize the incoming Trump administration after they said so many crazy, horrendous things? How are you expecting the public to believe that Trump is Hitler when, as soon as he wins the election, everybody goes and kisses the ring and Joe Biden himself is like, "I'm going to ensure a smooth transfer of power"? You don't see the hypocrisy there? You don't see the doublespeak? Come on now, stop it.
No, I guess they could speak up more.
Absolutely, they could have spoke up more. And as you admit in a later podcast episode, after watching Ezra Klein, you realized, yeah, Trump only has the actual powers of the presidency. Resistance could work. Why are people not resisting? I don't know. You tell me. Why is your party, which has a lot of the exact same billionaire donors, which the new DNC incoming chairman just said, "We're not going to ban billionaires. We're just going to take money from the good billionaires"? Gee, I wonder what the definition of a good billionaire to a Democrat would be. The one that donates to Democrats? Yeah, it ain't hard to figure out, man. These are the same people in both parties. So stop trying to act like there's this huge, stark difference and everyone should have known better. Yeah, Trump is a special kind of idiot. He's a special kind of threat and evil. But the real issue, which you're not talking about, is the threat to the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights. Now, I have to take that back. Maybe you are talking about it. I didn't deep dive your channel enough because you kind of disgusted me with your arrogance on this video. What I did see, I thought you were spot on. So, maybe I need to give you an olive branch. But I'm a little disgusted with your anger here and your narrative building so that you can just build a base of viewers and do it at the expense of my community. You're punching down. You're coming after a persecuted community that's literally in the crosshairs while they're down and celebrating on the pain of people who are either Palestinian or who've been working for the Palestinian cause for decades and who finally drew a line in the sand saying they're never going to listen to us. I'm sorry, we're not going to be one of those minority communities that delivers you into power and never expects anything. That's the whole point here. It's not stupid. It's not selfish. It's actually trying to make the world better because the genocide is harming America's interests all across the world. We're becoming incredibly isolated, and it's not just because of Trump. We were isolated before Trump. Trump, just like everything else, is just an accelerant making things worse. But it was bad before, and we had burnt bridges with the entire world before. We were just hoping that something would make it better. and you're making it worse. You're jumping on a bandwagon of hurting people to hurt them more for selfish gains. It's stupid. I can't take it.
But they can't do a damn thing. You know why? Because you were angry and you were going to send them a message.
So here it is, a false narrative of trying to blame the Muslim community in specific. He literally said that earlier. Trying to blame disempowered and persecuted and targeted communities for everything that Trump's about to do. That's a false narrative. I've addressed it on this channel before. I even created a short about it. And I'm specifically concerned about other communities and how they could suffer. Really, communities that are under threat, really marginalized communities, Latinos, African Americans, Asians, poor white working class people. A ton of communities out there that have a lot to lose under this administration. But not a person like this, not someone whose privilege is so big that he can't see straight and his ego is so out of control that he decides to dance on suffering people's pain. This guy just needs to stop.
This is what happens when you are utterly unserious.
You know what? We know what happens. You guys take your hoods off. You may not even know what you're doing, but you're showing us that you weren't our friends. You're showing us that you're a frenemy. You're pretending to be on the right side. And you may actually be against Donald Trump. I think you are. But you're definitely not for disenfranchised people or for equality. So, we can work together on fighting a common enemy, but we know who you are now. And that's what my message in this whole video to anyone watching who is actually of good faith and has a conscience. Pay attention to all the I told you so's. I broke down 3 categories of it for you. Know the ones who literally hold you in contempt and know that they don't want good for you, and don't listen to their advice.
And you use your vote to send a message instead of acting like an adult and making a decision between 2 choices.
The only way out of this doom loop is to break the binary divide of the 2-party system that turns every political issue into a purity test, where you can only be for us or against us. This begins with systemic changes to how we vote that will create more competition within the parties, more competition between the parties, more new voices at the table, and more people turning out to vote. Electoral reforms like these have the power to stop the zero-sum warfare that only serves the parties. They'll require candidates to put voters first and to actually be for something, not just against the other side.
Not just against the other side. This is a clip from an excellent ad from a group called Unite America. I will include it in the show notes in the description.
So what? You weren't getting everything you wanted from Joe Biden. Kamala Harris wasn't a perfect candidate in your mind. So what?
In my mind, in our mind, come on, homie. She got swept at the Electoral College. And for the first time in God knows how long, Republicans won the popular vote. Don't say she wasn't a good candidate in our mind. You punk. All the evidence out there shows she was a horrible candidate. Before, she was the least well-liked and lowest rated vice president in American history, or at least modern American history. She couldn't win her own state when she ran for president. She had to bow out of the primaries at that time. She has a track history of losing politically. She ran a campaign where they're to this day, on the 6th of February, still asking for money because they overspent in the wrong places and tried to rely on celebrity endorsements instead of policy. She was a horrible candidate and she ran a horrible campaign. There's no getting around it. So don't say in our mind. Open up your mind. Learn to listen instead of talk at people.
Welcome to being a freaking adult. You never get a choice of a perfect candidate.
Again, not what anyone asked for. We asked for some concessions. I think a lot of Muslims, if their campaign would have just let Ruha Roman, the Muslim Palestinian Georgia state rep who wears hijab and was ready to endorse Kamala Harris at the DNC, she only wanted to speak for 5 minutes, and she would have endorsed her. That would have been enough, because that would have sent a signal to say, hey, She actually is listening. She made a lot of mistakes, but the Democrats and the party do care about you. That would have been enough. But again, I already showed our community wasn't responsible for this outcome. Gaza was, and that's on y'all.
You never get everything you want.
Straw man.
It doesn't happen. You make a choice. Who is better? Vote for that person. Or who would be worse? Vote against that person.
And then that keeps you in the cycle of always assuring evil because you're always looking for the lesser of two evils. Some people are just tired. They're tired of it. And you know what? You're going to start to feel the pain because you're not advocating for what's the best possible candidates. You're not advocating for change fast enough. That's just what it is.
That's how adults behave. That's how serious American citizens who take democracy seriously, that's how they cast their votes. They don't use their vote to make a point. They're just making...
Because you rarely have to make a point. Your privilege is showing and it's sickening.
Making a point about themselves. They're not being serious with their vote. So, you know what? Screw all of you who voted for Donald Trump for whatever reason to make a point. You're responsible for everything that happens.
Straw man, it's not true. As I showed you, you're responsible because the DNC and people like you didn't demand better. We deserve better. We deserve better than you.
We tried to freaking warn you.
Listen to me. You have to give up the notion that the American people are, on balance, decent and smart. Get used to the fact, accept it, that they are neither.
See who we're dealing with here? Talking down to everyone. And he used they. Remember I kept telling you? Watch how he says we versus when he includes himself with Americans and when he doesn't. He just said we're not decent people on balance. The guy's a total grifter and a clown.
The American people are the most selfish, self-absorbed, short-sighted, oblivious people on the face of the earth.
So there it is, guys. I just want to finish this video off by telling us, reminding myself first and foremost, that the I told you so energy, it's misplaced, it's wrong. Trump just put out an executive order literally saying to eradicate anti-Christian bias in the United States. It would be hilarious, like as a Monty Python kind of script. The real fight here is not about if people are going to bend the knee to white privilege and, arrogant Democrat shills who refuse to service their voters. The real fight is the rise of authoritarianism, and this started under Biden, the erosion of the First Amendment, the erosion of our free speech, the erosion of our right to assembly, and all of our civil liberties, and now a more blunt and rapid attack on the Bill of Rights. It's all happening. And we're not paying attention because we're infighting. I didn't want to give this guy that much of my time or attention. I'm not going to really go back to this on the video because I think we need to be onward and upward and move on to finding out how we can work together. But part of that is knowing who your frenemies are, knowing what they really think about you and their real attitude to you. And then being mature enough to say, I could put all that aside when we have common cause. But just know that it's only common cause on whatever issue that you're working on. And then when it comes time for you to advocate for your own issues, look for other people who agree with you and have common cause, and tell these people who feel entitled to your vote and loyalty that they can put it where the sun don't shine. Because we don't need them. They need us. And it's evident through their anger. Have a good night. May God bless you all and your loved ones, including the frenemies. I hope they hate watch till the end.
Issa. Okay. Issa? Yes. Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway, convert to Islam, defines the mission.
Kind of a show that will put people on the edge of their seat.
Because it leads to the future and a more sophisticated approach.